A very good morning to you. You are watching Newsline. This morning I am Chathuranga filling in for Mr. Farhad Shawkatali, of course, the original host of this program. This morning we are going to step aside a bit from politics, but we are going to talk about something that all politicians talk about. The aviation sector of our country, especially the situation surrounding the Mattala International Airport, whether it's actually going to be given to the Indians or whether it's a beneficial deal for Sri Lanka as well. We are going to talk to Mr. Johanne Jayaratne, the Executive Director of Airport and Aviation Sri Lanka. Good morning to you, sir.
Very good morning to you, Chathuranga.
At the outset, before we get to the Mattala International Airport, I want to ask you a question. Now, we remember the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the Central Bank and how the financial sector of our country, especially the apex financial body, the institution, was under scrutiny because of this Presidential Commission, and everything that was done by the Central Bank was looked upon with a negative opinion, a view, because of the Presidential Commission. Everything they did was considered wrong. A similar situation has befallen the aviation sector as well. Every decision Sri Lankan Airlines takes, every decision other aviation related institutions take, will be looked upon with a magnifying glass because there is a situation where has led to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry inquiring into the irregularities. Now my question to you is very simple. Sri Lankan Airlines is considered a brand name that represents Sri Lanka overseas. And when we know that this brand name is being tarnished, if I may put it that way, by people who has caused it to be investigated under a Presidential Commission, what do you as a person in the aviation sector feel?
I would like to comment on it from an airport standpoint. Yes, it is a matter of great concern. At the same time, I believe it's a very good thing to have this kind of transparency in place, because aviation is highly dependent on the safety and the security of the industry, and this type of thing is something that has to be brought to the forefront.
Mr. Jayaratne, now, yes, that's from an airport point of view. Yes, transparency is a good thing. But now, this is not something that has happened in 1 year or in 5 years. This has happened over a very long period of time. Decisions taken by politicians, political decisions, if I may put it that way, has led to a brand name that represents our country to go down the slope. Now, yes, we can point fingers and say this is the person responsible, this is the person responsible. No, but it's a collective responsibility of a government. Now, this government has come into power. There were several areas of concern after this government came into power, especially regarding the wet lease, so on and so forth. But now, once again, the government has taken a decision, the president has taken a decision to appoint a Presidential Commission. Things are coming to light. Now, we have a news report today to say that there was a manager who testified before the commission who said that 4 department heads have been hired without an interview process. Minor things that, very basic things
Absolutely.
have been ignored by Sri Lankan as a whole and affecting all the aviation related institutions. Your idea?
With regard to the interview process, I mean, this is something that is very critical, as I said, because this is a very safety-driven industry.
Yeah.
It's also a very sophisticated industry that requires a lot of professionalism and experience and, the know-how, if you may. So, getting the right people into the right positions is a very, very important factor, whether it be airports or airlines or whatever it might be. So, I feel that this is a very good exercise, and I think there have been some political influences over the years, and that has to be looked at very carefully, and these organizations should be given the autonomy to do what they have to do in order to put out a good product.
If I may ask you this question, the fact that the Sri Lankan government at the time decided to introduce Mihin Lanka, was that the right way to go, or was that ad hoc decision taken based on political whims and fancies?
I believe Mihin Lanka was established as the budget carrier to support the Sri Lankan long-haul operations. So, in principle, I believe it was a very good decision, because most of these major airlines, whether it be Singapore Airlines or whatever, they do have the budget lines as well. However, Mihin Lanka did not take on the dressage, if you may, of a budget airline. It was a little bit more upscale, so there was very little differentiation between the legacy carrier and the budget. So these were some of the pitfalls that Mihin Lanka faced highest at the time.
Common understanding is that Main Lanka was created because the former president of our country was not given a flight to go for a foreign tour from a very prominent airline company in the world. Anything to say?
I'm not aware of that, but once again, like I said, Mihin Lanka did have, they did have good intentions when Mihin Lanka was formed, yes.
Let's come back to the airport and aviation Sri Lanka. You as the executive director, there are several development projects being carried out at the Bandaranaike International Airport as well as the Ratmalana Airport. The airport in Batticaloa is operational, I'm told.
Yes, yes.
So let's come back to the BIA. Now we know that the airport the runway was closed from time to time for renovations, repairs, and we declared it open a while back. And how has the feedback been thereafter?
It has been phenomenal. It has been very, very good. The functionality has improved greatly, and we are very, very happy with the result.
And Ratmalana, what are these development activities that we're talking about?
Ratmalana, we came up with a master plan for Ratmalana. We're going to develop it primarily as a corporate jet hub, and it will definitely be a complement to the Port City project, which is back online now, because we're expecting high net worth individuals to come into the financial district of the Port City, and they typically use business jets and so on. So Ratmalana will feed in beautifully to that. We are also in the process of having the Air Force move from the south side to the north side of Ratmalana. That's a large budget item, and that will completely free up the south side of the airport for civilian use. So we are pretty excited about that development. It's a 1.5 billion rupee project, and it's a Civil Aviation Authority and Airport Aviation are funding it.
What is the time frame that you're looking at to get this done?
We are hoping to complete the move by the end of this, the Air Force move by the end of this year, and the FBO for a corporate jet operation will be, an RFP will be floated within the next maybe a month or so.
Right.
So we're pretty excited about all of that.
Now when we say we have an operational airport in the eastern province, what does that mean? What is this Batticaloa airport doing there, and where did it come from, if I may ask you that? And what is your target with regard to the Batticaloa airport?
The Batticaloa airport has been in existence since the 1940s, I believe, as a military base, and it has been in operation throughout. What we have done is we formalized it as a civilian operation now, and it is primarily to support the tourism industry on the East Coast. All these resorts in Pasikuda and so on, were in dire need of some air connectivity with Colombo, so that has been provided. We have 2 airlines that are doing frequent flights in there, and just to give you a statistic, in the month of April, I believe we opened the airport up in March, perhaps, if I'm not mistaken. And in April, we had 50 aircraft movements and about 150 passengers traveling to the East Coast.
So those are also operated under Sri Lankan?
They are operated under Airport and Aviation.
Airport and Aviation. How many
It's actually a joint operation with the Air Force.
Right, Air Force. Right. Now, when we come back to the Mattala airport, now this whole controversy surrounding Mattala being given to India and all of that, just shed some light upon what's happening with regard to Mattala.
I want to be very, very clear on this. We are not giving it away. We are not divorcing ourselves from the Mattala airport. What we're doing is we are bringing in a partner with some cash flow to actually enhance the operations or get the operations up and running. We are in negotiation with the Airport Authority of India, which is also the regulator in India, and they operate 120 plus airports within India. So not only do they bring the money, they also bring the expertise to complement what we are good at doing as well. It is actually a joint venture. It's a lease of 40 years, renewable at the end of that period on a mutually agreed upon basis. The chief valuer of the valuation department has valued Mattala at $322 million US. So that amounts to 225 million, which would constitute the 70%. It's a 70-30 split that we're looking at for the Indian party. And that will pretty much take care of the debt load that we are carrying right now. Airport Aviation is actually servicing these debts, so that's a good thing. The business model and the business plan is going to be developed between Airport Authority of India and Airport Aviation, so it will play a significant role in the development of Mattala throughout the 40-year period. So we are pretty excited about that, and we are looking forward to seeing this go through. And once again, I want to emphasize the fact that we are not selling it. It's just a lease, and it's a joint venture. The
70-30 split, is that how the profit is also going to be shared?
Yes, the profit and the cost as well.
Profit and the cost. So you said that currently aviation, Airport and Aviation Sri Lanka is servicing the debts obtained for the Mattala International Airport. If I may ask you, how much are we giving out at the moment?
In what regard? In
servicing the debts, how much are we paying?
We are paying approximately, let me put it to you this way, the total debt outstanding, the loan was for $190 million US, and we paid up about, I would say about 30 to 40 million, I think. The outstanding debt is about 152 million at the moment.
China?
To China.
Yes.
China Exim Bank. Yeah.
Now, when we say we are not divorcing ourselves and we are doing this for 40 years and we can renew it at the end of 40 years and the profit is going to be split 70-30, 70 to them, 30 to us, it's very clear to me, it's clear to our audience. I'm sure the government is able to speak out and say this is what's happening. Why is there this problem to say, look, India is going to take this? Why is this problem there then? Is it a problem of the government not being able to lay out what they're doing right, or where is the problem is what I'm trying to ask you.
It's a question of many independent opinions on this,
right.
Not particularly educated opinions.
Right.
So I think when things begin to gel a little bit further, we will be making regular statements as to how this thing is going and maintaining the transparency of the entire project. And I think that will probably solve most of these problems that we're having.
So now, one of the key problems these spoken about is that Sri Lanka is a geopolitically important location, and when China is investing in all of these major projects, India also wants to have their say, and they are focusing on the Mattala International Airport, which also makes sense in a way if you take a look at it. So is that what we are trying to do? Are we trying to play according to the geopolitical needs of two major superpowers, or are we trying to actually do something that is beneficial to the country while catering to the geopolitical nature?
The geopolitical subject is beyond my pay grade and salary scale, so I'm not going to approach it from a geopolitical standpoint. What I would do, however, is to approach it from a business perspective, and I think it's a good move, simply because Mattala Airport happened before the destination happened. I think I mentioned this earlier as well. Until such time the destination develops, Mattala will remain dormant. However, with the Airport Authority of India, they do have the persuasive powers to bring in Indian airlines on terminator flights into Mattala. So if Mattala Airport were to be developed, for example, as a duty-free destination, perhaps we could get that demographic into Mattala. So these are good things.
Without India getting involved, couldn't we have done that ourselves, spoken to other countries and got the Mattala International Airport to be a termination point?
We could have provided the facilities on ground, but to attract airlines, it takes a lot of doing. And we don't have that kind of wherewithal. We can market Mattala, but like I said, until such time that the destination happens, it's going to take a little bit of time. Case in point, with the Shangri-La Hotel in place, we've had 176 non-scheduled international flights, that's charters coming in for weddings and high net worth individuals coming to play golf, for instance. So that's a classic example of how the destination development can assist the airport in its operations.
The Mattala International Airport was, since we're talking about the destination, was not originally designed to be in Mattala. It was the government's previous governments have planned it to be somewhere else. We heard the Prime Minister speaking about it a while back, saying he was to construct it down south, and he was to construct it in the middle of the country, and then it moved down south during the previous government.
Right.
Now y'all are, or the country is given with this challenge, here is the airport, market it. And now the Indian government and the Indian Aviation Authority has come in. There has been a deal is in the process of being done. Now, my question to you is this 70-30 split. Is this the best way, or could it have been 60-40, 50-50?
I mean, in the ideal world, a 51-49 in our favor, in the Sri Lanka's favor, would have been ideal. But it doesn't particularly take care of the debt problems that we have, and we want to kind of divorce ourselves from the debt load to some extent. So the 730 split is very viable. And speaking of Mattala Airport, one of the things that's very critical that everyone understands is that you can't look at the airport in isolation.
Yeah.
When the Hambantota Development Initiative was was put in place, it involved the airport, the seaport, the convention center, the stadiums, the administrative complex, and all of these things form the matrix.
Yeah.
So any of these projects as a singular project is probably not the best way to look at it. You've got to look at it from a wholesome standpoint.
Mr. Jayaratne, now the other key factor is we are using the word divorce a lot. We can't divorce ourselves from China as well. There is a lot happening in terms of China. I know you said you can't speak about the geopolitical nature of it, but let me ask you from a business point of view. China is investing a lot, and we don't want to upset an investor, if I may put it that way, since we are talking business terms. And we are also bringing in the other major investor in the region and saying, look, you're investing here, 70-30 split, we are all happy. But will that upset our other investor?
Probably not. I mean, I don't see any reason for anyone to get, because China built the airport.
Yeah.
India is going to help us to operate it. So it's a union in that regard, between China.
If it works out well.
Yeah, of course.
Ms. Jayaratne, now we know that apart from this Mattala airport issue, we know several other issues that Sri Lankan and the aviation authority is working about is the issue of this staffing problem. The Sri Lankan especially, there are people coming out and say we have too much staff, then people come out and say no, we don't have too much staff, we can manage with this. There is a problem with regard to the CEO, there is a problem, CEO is appointed, a lot happening at the same time in the same sector. Presidential Commission, Mattala is being, there is a deal being struck, then there is this staffing issue, all sorts of things happening. Now my question to you is once again, yes, it looks like a classroom without a monitor. What's going on in the aviation sector? Is it the problem of the minister, or is it the problem somewhere else?
I think it's a traditional problem that we have in Sri Lanka when it comes to the government-owned establishments. Now, if you look at Sri Lankan and Airport Aviation, of which I'm the executive director, we are considered state-owned enterprises. So we are fully owned by the government. Sri Lanka not as much as us. Having said that, I mean there are certain things that happen, that causes overstaffing and so on and so forth. So it wouldn't probably happen in the private sector, but like I said, government-owned establishments do have this this inherent problem. The point is to be able to manage that in a way where it can be sustained and be made profitable. Now, for instance, airport and aviation, I would consider a model SOE in this country. Last year we had over 20 billion rupees in revenue, with a profit after taxes of about 8 billion, and we pay the government dividends because they are the major stakeholder, the treasury is. So, things can be managed. It can be done.
Ms. Jayaratne, with that, let's go into a short commercial break. We just started speaking about this overstaffing issue. We'll speak more about this after we come back. Stay with us. You're watching NEWSLINE. Welcome back. You're watching NEWSLINE. This morning we're talking to Ms. Johanne Jayaratne, the Executive Director of Airport and Aviation Sri Lanka. We just started talking to him about this overcrowding point, spoken about very widely by everyone involved in the aviation sector. Some say it is a problem, some say it's not. Mrs. Jayaratne says the problem is the factor that it's not managed and it should be managed. So I'm going to come back to the point again. You said before we went into the break that the airport and aviation Sri Lanka paid dividends to the government. You're a model SOE. Maybe Satosa can take a leaf of your progress. But my question to you is, when it comes to the support given to you by the government, though you're a completely state-owned enterprise, you need the support of the minister, the deputy minister, so on and so forth. Where is that level of cooperation? Is it at a satisfactory level? I know you're going to say it is at a satisfactory level, but I'm asking you the question anyway. Is it working?
Absolutely, and I'm not saying this simply because we're talking about politicians and whatnot, but we are very fortunate in having a very dynamic team on the top there with the Honourable Minister and the Honourable Deputy Minister. They understand the problem and they are very supportive, and they do what's necessary at that level to get things done, and that is vital for this industry. So we are very fortunate in that sense. With
this government coming into power, initially or during the run-up to the presidential and the general election, there was this statements made that the Mattala International Airport was useless. They said it was the white elephant of the government, and a lot of things were said. And this government decided to store paddy in the storage facilities of the Mattala International Airport. I remember in November of 2016, a parliamentarian attached to the National Freedom Front came out and said that we lost aerodrome certification issued by the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka and the ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, and that we lost it because the government decided to put paddy in the storage facility. Now, how true is this statement, and has this really happened?
Absolutely not true. The aerodrome certification was never revoked. The storage period of paddy may have been for about 6 months at the most. And actually we got an income out of that. The paddy marketing board or whatever it might be actually paid us storage fees. So it all worked out well. For whatever reason, paddy was stored, and that's all said and done.
It's a government decision.
Yeah.
But did that affect the airport? Damage any of the facilities there or anything like that?
There was some negative impacts because the air conditioning and stuff like that had to be replaced and so on and so forth. But it's done and dusted. So we are. But
while you incurred a profit, you also incurred a loss.
True.
In terms of getting the... now, Mr. Jayaratne, all in all, I want to talk about the overall aspect of the aviation sector, and we spoke about the Presidential Commission, a negative image there. You say, you're an SOE with earning dividends and paying the government dividends, but all in all, where are we standing in terms of the aviation sector? Are we looking good? Are we looking bad? Where are we?
There are some challenges, Chathuranga, at the moment, because we are over capacity at BIA. We are about almost 50% over capacity. That particular terminal was built for 6 million, where last year we did almost 10 million passenger movements. So that's a bit of a challenge. We are going through the development of the stage 2, which consists of a terminal and some apron work. The apron work is underway. The terminal is a little behind time. So in order to alleviate some of the congestion, we are going on with a temporary or an interim terminal solution, which will be up and running by the first quarter of next year. That will accommodate about another 2 million passengers. So we are trying to put out the fires as we go along.
Does that mean that we have to obtain more loans?
The interim terminal is going to be self-funded. The second stage is being funded by JICA. It's at a very competitive rate at 0.2% or something like that. But the thing is that the delays is what has to be arrested.
Now, you say we are over capacity by 50%. Now, we also have another airport. Now, we spoke about this earlier, the extension of the runway. The amount of flights also has increased, I'm told, from if you compare over the years, the numbers are increasing. So, is there any possibility of the government looking into an aspect of creating a second runway in the airport?
That has been talked about at BIA for quite a long time. The question is whether we're going to put it, where are we going to put it, on the north side or the south side? Those are the only two options. So that debate is ongoing. And we should see some resolution within the next maybe year or two.
But how important is it? Is it something that we can wait for? It's something that is urgently needed.
I think demarcating the land right now is the way to go. Whether we need another active runway right now, in my opinion, it's not particularly necessary. Once again, case in point, Gatwick, I think processes something like 35 million passengers on a single runway. Mumbai just surpassed that with about 48% or 48 million passenger movements a year on a single runway. So if you look at those, what we need to do is we need to upgrade our technology and our procedures and make the runway capacity or increase the runway capacity, which we have actually done or in the process of doing. So these things will negate the need for a active second runway immediately.
When the runway was widened, there was this, the reason for the widening was shown by the Deputy Minister of Transport himself, was that an A380 can land. Then there was a test flight that was carried out, and if my memory serves right, I think it was successful.
Yeah, we've had over 7 380 landings. They were technical landings prior to the runway overlay. And what we did was we widened the shoulders by 7.5 meters on either side for 15 meters, and we did have a commercial operation of a 380 right after the runway overlay, and that was, I mean, it's ready. It's good to go for 380 operations.
But is there an insurance component there? Is there any component to say if an A380 lands in Sri Lanka, there will be no insurance payment if something goes wrong? Is there something like that?
No.
Is there something like that? I remember seeing something like that being shared on social media. Is there any truth to that statement?
There's no truth to that.
So at the moment, an A380 commercial flight can land at the Bandar Naik International Airport without any issue.
Absolutely.
Once again, now we speak about these development points at the Bandar Naik International Airport. You've laid out quite a few things that are happening. You said what's happening at the Ratmalana International Airport as well. Now, from time to time, we hear people from the government coming forward and speaking of another airport being constructed. Every time there is an election coming close, there seems to be this airport seems to be the thing that's, the magician's hat sort of trick sort of thing. Now, my question to you is, We have several airports. You said the Bratislava airport has been there from the time of the World War, and you have developed it. Now we have things like that happening. The Air Force has their bases. How many airports do we need in this country?
Very good question. I think what we have is sufficient. I think there might be some justification for another international airport on the East Coast to develop that eastern belt, if you may. But then again, with the domestic connectivity, BI and Mattala, I think, would suffice in serving the entire nation's needs.
You've brought me to an interesting point. Now, domestic flights. We know that countries of our size, in other countries, have domestic flights operating to a very successful level. There is a common understanding that domestic flights in our country are expensive when compared to other modes of transport, and it's understandable. But when we look at it internationally, are we behind when it comes to domestic flights?
Not necessarily. The actual need for domestic aviation has not arisen as of yet, but we can see a gradual calling for this type of service. And it's a price point that's the showstopper. And if I strongly believe if we can get a round trip anywhere within the country down to about $100 to $115 or there somewhere thereabouts, I think that's where the market.
What is the average like right now? If
well, I'm happy to say that the second airline that's operating to Bratislava is in that particular price range, but it's one way, as opposed to another airline that was charging something to the tune of over $200 each way. Now that's a little on the high side.
The northern region of our country, is the northern region isolated when it comes to domestic flights?
No, because Palal is fully operational. It's under the Air Force, of course, but civilian flights do go there. We have 12 domestic airports, all operated, other than Ratmalan, operated by the Air Force. And the Air Force has opened it up for civilian traffic as well, so there's no issue.
Right.
It's just a question of formalizing the civilian movements.
And that is done by the aviation.
Airport aviation, yeah.
Final few questions. Now, we can be speaking about this and you can say, look, we are at this place and this place, but the actual problem when it comes to what the government does and what the people understand, the gap there is the communication.
Yeah.
Now, I've been asking this question from a lot of people, and I'm going to ask the same question from you. Maybe the government does a lot of things, maybe it doesn't, but that communication aspect, isn't that a problem to individuals like you who are doing services with regard to the aviation sector, maybe the financial sector, maybe, but people who are operating under the government? If the government cannot come forward and say, look, this is what we are doing and these are the good things that we are doing and this is where we have gone wrong, how important is it for the government to be transparent, for the people to have build a certain amount of trust, if I may put it that way?
I think it's absolutely vital that happens, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there and a lot of misnomers as well. So these things have to be brought under one umbrella, and it has to be communicated properly to the public, because everything that the government does, I mean, there's a lot of viability, there's a lot of justification for it, but how it's communicated is what is lacking.
I'm only focusing this on the aviation sector because you're from the executive director of the airport and aviation. When it comes to the aviation sector, what you all do, is it being communicated properly to the people by the government?
I think it needs a lot more work. We are communicating, but it's not adequate. So that has to be, and we are consistently trying to upgrade that information flow, if you may.
Thank you, Mr. Johanne Jayaratne, the Executive Director of the Airport and the Aviation Sri Lanka, for joining us this morning. It was quite interesting talking to you. We spoke a lot about the development activities that are happening in terms of the Bandaranaike International Airport, the Bratmalana Airport, as well as the airport in Bratislava. We spoke about domestic flights, so on and so forth. We spoke about the Presidential Commission. We have in fact spoken a lot about the aviation sector. Key takeaway is that the government needs to improve on their communication skills to get to the people what the aviation airport and aviation Sri Lanka is doing, and in terms of the other sectors as well. So that is one key takeaway from the interview we had with Mr. Jayaratne. We will join you once again with an interesting guest like Mr. Jayaratne to talk about more issues our country is facing politically, economically and socially. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Chathuranga.